And Scoop will be the ranking 2 years from now. Although he's going to be ranking in another meeting, so he can't object. Therefore, Leahy will be ranking.
Admiral, I want to apologize for being a couple of minutes late, but the other senator from Texas is a low-ranking member of the Navy, as he should be. I just wanted him to be sure to be here.
We're always willing to wait for the chairman of the armed services.
What is he, Chief Petty Officer?
Yes. Taking great pride.
Is he up to a petty officer now?
Chief Petty Officer.
Not his
Chief Petty
abortions
Officer.
mate.
You mean
Thank you,
John
Chief.
Dow is the chief petty officer?
Yeah, they're going to make him admiral. He hangs around long enough. I thought I was the lowest ranking.
He goes over and he makes a scene and he's beautiful.
No, I got my rank captain legitimately. You know? I mean,
Strong
so
crowd.
when I first got in Congress, Cy Vance was then Secretary of the Army. So he came to visit me. He says, "We want you in the reserve. We'll have the reserve."
Fine.
Okay, well, I'm glad.
I'll be here.
He says, "We can arrange that." So we arranged something whereby I won't get any increase in the time to pay while I'm in the So he said, we make you the cash trainer. And I kind of fell. So I said, how about a colonel? I said, the fellas in the outfit would laugh at me. And so he says, what rank do you want? I says, captain. He says, how about a major? I says, well, major I could qualify for because if you serve as captain for so many months, good behavior, you automatically can go up. So here I am, a major. I go to my first meeting. And I figured I'm high ranking, right? Christ, you see these captains and colonels, lieutenant colonels, they all put on the uniform and fly. Because what they do is if they were lawyers, for each year in private practice, it's an equivalent of so much for the judge after the general office. Okay? And so you got these guys that don't know how to salute. Well, that's not important. Sheesh. I was the lowest ranking guy.
I bet you had more written
We'll get started. The meeting will come to order. I'm sure that Senator Tower will be here. He's detained. Admiral Inman, I'm very happy to see you appearing at this hearing as President Reagan's choice to be Deputy Director of Central Intelligence. You have my vote even before I hear your testimony. And if there's ever such a thing as the right man for the right job at the right time, you're that man. Just last week at the Casey hearing, I urged along with all of my colleagues that he go after you for this job, so your being here today is good news to me. You're a man of outstanding qualifications, integrity, and compassion. And I must say, through my intelligence friends around this world, I don't know of a man in the business that's more highly regarded than you. We're lucky to have you, and the nation will be better for it. So I'm going to ask Senator Benson to start the introduction of you, he being from Texas and you being from Texas. I would like to recognize, though, the fact that Mrs. Inman is sitting right behind you, which is her proper place.
Mr. Chairman, that was a superb introduction in itself, and so I'll keep mine short. But I'm here to add my support and introduction of Admiral Inman, Texan, but a man who's nomination, from all I have heard, has received nothing but accolades. He's a man of integrity, a man with a great depth of experience in the intelligence field. I'm really pleased to see that he would take this position, because he already had a responsible position as head of the National Security Agency and was doing a superb job in that regard. Obviously, he has great technical qualifications in addition to the question of integrity and ability. He's a graduate of the University of Texas. He's a man who I think will bring the kind of experience and breadth of the job which will please all of us. He's appeared many times before this committee and is well known by most of the members of the committee. So I'm delighted to join in support of him, and I know my colleague, Senator Tower, feels just as strongly as I do in that regard. And if he was not unavoidably detained, would be here.
Thank you very much, Senator, and hoping that Senator Tower will show up. I have a letter here that I will not read, but it's from Edward Boland, who is chairman of the House Committee, corresponds to this. I'll ask unanimous consent that it be placed in the record after the introduction by Senator Tower, if we're still hoping. And to get a few other things done that must be done, I will ask that the ethics report on Admiral Bobby R. Inman be placed in the record following the comments by Congressman Boland. Without objection, that will be done. So we'll just be patient a moment. That's part of the game.
Mr. Chairman, when I left the policy luncheon, Senator Tower was still conducting, the Vice President was still there, and I'm sure that's why he is detained.
Well, would it be the wish of the committee that we proceed and allow Senator Tower to introduce Admiral Inman when he comes in the interest of time?
Fine.
Fine. Well, Senator Moynihan is unavoidably detained for a while. I'll recognize Senator Noye. You make... no, let's have it the other way around. Let's have you make a statement if you want to.
Chairman, I appreciate very much the kind words with which you opened the session. I would not elect to judge this committee's views on the subject of whether or not this country ought to have a draft, but I did come to this table with something of the feel of a draftee. I'm grateful to have the committee's support, and I hope both of us will feel at the end of 2 years that it was the right choice. It is a distinct pleasure to appear before this committee on this occasion. I've been nominated by the President to serve as the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence. You're all generally aware of my background. My most recent assignment is the Director of the National Security Agency. However, it might be useful for me to review that background and experience in light of this nomination. As a native of the state of Texas, I was educated, received a degree of Bachelor of Arts from the University of Texas at Austin in 1950. Shortly after joining the Naval Reserve in 1951 and being commissioned as an ensign in March of 1952, I joined the USS Valley Forge, then participating in operations in the Korean area. Later, I served in various administrative assignments in the European theater. Following release from and then returned to active duty 6 months later with the Navy, I served in various shipborne operational assignments and in several intelligence assignments, functioning as an intelligence analyst and as an assistant naval attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Stockholm. Subsequent assignments included service as the Fleet Intelligence Officer on the staff of the Commander 7th Fleet, attendance at the National War College, Executive Assistant and Senior Aide to the Vice Chief of Naval Operations, Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence to the Commander-in-Chief U.S. Pacific Fleet, Director of Naval Intelligence, and Vice Director for Plans, Operations, and Support of the Defense Intelligence Agency. As you know, since 5 July 1977, I have had the pleasure of serving as the Director of the National Security Agency. Although my current assignment has involved me heavily in the collection and production of intelligence information, the majority of my experience during 21 years of service in the field of intelligence has been as an analyst and a manager. The variety of my assignments has provided me with a unique perspective on the need to balance the production and analytic facets of the intelligence mission, and to provide for the needs of the nation's policymakers, both in the executive and the Congress, and the needs of the military forces. I am in complete agreement with Mr. Casey in his statement to this committee that it is vital that this nation have a strong and effective intelligence organization with a wide range of capabilities and the flexibility to adapt and focus them on whatever exterior threats or problems confront the nation.
Thank you, Admiral. Senator Noye, we'll start with you. Take the question.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much. Before proceeding with my questions, I'd like to join you in your very eloquent statement regarding our nominee. It's been my pleasure to work with Admiral Inman, and I think the administration should be commended for this choice. Admiral, in the past, military officers who have held the posts for which you have been nominated have performed a very limited role, particularly with respect to the Central Intelligence Agency. What is your understanding of the specific duties and responsibilities that you will fulfill as Deputy Director of Central Intelligence?
Senator Noye, as you know, the National Security Act provides for a Deputy Director of Central Intelligence, but it does not prescribe specific duties. In discussing with Mr. Casey his desire that I undertake these duties, it is my understanding that he expects me to be the statutory deputy in every respect. In examining how he will divide those responsibilities day by day, or emphasis, he has indicated his desire that we share in his number one priority of striving to improve the quality of intelligence available, and particularly the estimative function. He will concentrate to a substantial degree on the covert operations, clandestine collection sides of the business. And he has expressed the particular desire that I concentrate on community affairs, budget account, resource allocation, the technical side of the business.
Have these duties and responsibilities been agreed to by the President?
It's my understanding that they have been agreed to by the President.
It's been suggested that the committee has not been very successful in its efforts to strengthen United States intelligence through the budget authorization process. As a former program manager who has been intimately involved with the committee on these matters, how would you characterize the committee's record in this regard?
Senator Noye, that's one in which in a closed session I could be very specific and direct, and in an open session, because the figures, the numbers, the statistics are classified, you'll forgive me for falling back on some generalities. When this committee came about, we had gone through about 8 years of drawing down manpower all across the intelligence community. Just as you really settled into operation with the new administration, the concentration was more on saving expenditure of dollars. It was my experience throughout these 4 years that this committee constantly pressed on the administration the question of the adequacy of the intelligence assets. You added a little from time to time, which is not always the easiest process when the administration is not particularly willing to have extra money added. We collectively have a long way to go, I believe, to build the intelligence capability this country needs for the decade out ahead. If the committee sustains the approach to that problem they brought through the last year, and we can help reorient the way the executive branch deals with it, I believe we've got a good chance of dealing with those problems.
During Director Casey's confirmation, he indicated that both he and the President were supportive of strong congressional oversight of U.S. intelligence activities. Admiral, do you foresee any problems or difficulties in abiding by the spirit and intent of the intelligence oversight provisions enacted by the Congress last year?
Senator Noy, I do not. I recognize that a lot of negotiations and a lot of anguish went into finding the exact words that went into that act. The executive branch was particularly concerned to get in some of the preambular clauses, and the committee, the text that followed. There may well be areas in which I have no experience. That will cause me to rethink my past experience. But I have never found an instance in these 6 years in which we've been doing business in which I could not find a way to keep the committees fully and completely informed. And I have in turn found that I have benefited in each of 3 assignments by the support I have drawn in return.
Then would you say that you're satisfied with the current relationship that we have, the oversight relationship?
Senator, I believe the U.S. intelligence community is substantially better off than it was before this relationship was established. That's because you had no way to come and bring your case to the Hill. The intelligence community had no constituency in the Congress in any kind of organized way to support the need for a strong, healthy, viable intelligence structure. The other side of that coin is that one must have absolute sense of confidence that security will be maintained for not only the substantive intelligence, but even more critically, the sources and methods information that must be shared in the process of budget authorizations and enactment. I do believe the standard you set as the chairman in starting this committee struck exactly the right note. I have not been reluctant to bring to this committee in the past my concerns. If I had concerns for the handling of classified information, I will not be reluctant to do that in the future. The record that I've had is that the committee has always been very responsive. Both of the 2 previous chairmen, the vice chairman during his 4 years and now taking up, have always been very responsive to my concerns when we need to examine whether or not leak or mishandling came from this committee. If I had been as successful in the executive branch, I would be much more comfortable about the protection of our secrets today.
Do you have any suggestions as to how we may improve this relationship?
I have none really to volunteer at the outset. I hope we can maintain a close working relationship. There will be times when we'll need to compartment even amongst ourselves. That sometimes will be distressing to the staff, as it has been, and as it is to our staffs in the executive branch when we must do that. But the essence of the relationship is to make sure we do continue a dialogue constantly about all our problems.
I thank you very much. As our chairman indicated, you had my vote before you were nominated.
Thank you. I might say this room has not been swept, so please be careful in asking questions that you don't get into the Never Never Land. Senator Leahy, Senator Garn.
We have similar hairlines.
More senatorial hairline. That's what it is. How's it feel to be ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Inman, I think everybody shares the views that have already been expressed. I personally have had the opportunity as a charter member of this committee to work with you over a period of several years now. And of all the witnesses that have appeared before us, and most of them in executive or in closed sessions, I would say to you personally and publicly that you have been the most forthcoming witness before this committee of all the witnesses that we have had, the most direct at all times, without ever hedging your opinions or worrying about any politics of the situation. And so I commend you for that. There is no doubt in my mind in your new position that you will continue that openness and directness. That has certainly helped us on this committee in our work to have that kind of responsiveness. So I too join in strongly endorsing your selection. I can think of no one better to have been nominated by the President for this position. In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, I have a further prepared statement that I would ask unanimous consent the remainder of it be placed in the record.
Without objection.
Admiral, I recognize that here in open session that what you said to Senator Noe, that you cannot answer in detail, and I do not expect you to. I do expect only some general answers. What do you believe are the most significant problems facing the Central Intelligence Agency and the intelligence community in general today?
Senator Garner, I can speak with some greater precision about the broad terms of the intelligence community. And I hope in a few months to have the same degree of confidence in speaking about the internal problems of Central Intelligence Agency. It simply has not been possible in the previous assignments to delve into their problems inside the agency to the degree that I will hope to do. I would put our number one problem as manpower. My perception is that we have, for various reasons, either to draw down from the Vietnam time, followed by trading off manpower to pay for new technical capabilities, to drawing down covert operations capabilities. But we have collectively through all of this reduced very substantially the manpower applied to the U.S. intelligence effort. The investments in technology, in communications, in computer capabilities have offset that reduction, and in fact have done some great things for us in some areas. But it is a manpower-intensive industry, and there are no substitutes for analysts who understand the cultures, the politics, the economics, the internal security, the military capabilities of countries in keeping this country and its policymakers and its military leaders abreast of the problems they're going to face day by day. I believe we have some substantial expansion to do in the depth of our coverage of events in the world. We all need to try to do better to express what we know to users in a way that it's useful to them, not in the way that, not for the convenience of the intelligence community. That can only come about by creating a very good dialogue with the users and to get them to be much more specific. Hopefully we can be successful in that.
How would you characterize the track record of the intelligence community over the last several years in assessing the Soviet threat?
We have, on rare occasions, overestimated, and on many more occasions proven to have been conservative. The pace of the Soviet momentum, the sustaining the momentum of investment, has consistently been underestimated. There is a great proclivity to mirror image, to view the Soviets from the light of how we address problems or how we deal with them. And we constantly have to be brought back to the center line to examine what we see happening and to try to put that in some context of what their capabilities are, what their desires are, what their intentions are. But the track record, and there's some good open source studies, Wohlstetter, others, would confirm that we have erred substantially more on the conservative side in dealing with that threat than in overestimating. So the image that's been current in the media of overestimating the threat for budget purposes is just flatly wrong.
That has been my experience, not only as a member of this committee, as a former member of Armed Services, as a current member of the Defense Appropriations Committee, that we have constantly been told that Joint Chiefs of Staff, the service chiefs, the intelligence people have constantly come before the committees of Congress overestimating the Soviet threat in order to increase the military budget. And the Russians are coming, and they never come. But that is not true. All of the assessments that I've seen are just exactly in line with what you have just testified, that those estimates, the posture statements every year from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, have almost entirely underestimated the Soviet buildup and the Soviet threat. And so my next question would be, how do you intend to proceed in your new position to get accurate, straightforward assessments of the Soviet threat, where the track record, as you say, and I agree with you, have been consistently underestimating that threat?
Senator Garn, I should have responded to Senator Noy earlier in the question, the definition of my duties, that I recognize I am being appointed as the deputy DCI, and that it is not a duumvirate, and that we don't share the responsibilities. It's my job to persuade the DCI how I think we ought to go. In our brief discussions thus far, he has some very clear thoughts of his own about how he wants to proceed in this process. And I would not want to oversimplify, and again, in an open session, it's a tough one to be specific. He said we both bring to this problem the approach that you're better served by trying to put up the facts that you know, to try to make clear the assumptions that you're bringing to the table, to make sure you put out the assumptions that the different players bring and try to explain why, and then put forth your projections. But don't try to spend endless periods of time polishing words and searching for the right word to captivate. In this case, it's one I would rather give them more knowledge than less. Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
Just one more question, Admiral. What are your views concerning the adequacy of our current counterintelligence capability?
Senator Garn, that's probably the area approaching about which I have the least knowledge. The only counterintelligence practical experience that I've had thus far has been as Director of Naval Intelligence. I was also Commander of Naval Intelligence Command, and the Naval Investigative Service was one of my subordinate elements. We had a very small counterintelligence activity. It was good, but not large. It's an area that I will hope to study thoroughly in the near term. I have a perception that it's both undermanned and probably the one area that really is handicapped by restrictions and procedures.
Thank you very much, Admiral. I'll certainly look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Senator Tarr, we welcome you and invite you to introduce your fellow Texan. He's already been introduced. And we'll ask unanimous consent that your introduction appear at the proper place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being late. I was presiding over a meeting of the Republican Policy Committee, and the subject was the debt ceiling, a matter in which there seems to be somewhat more than casual interest among Republicans. I'm delighted to support the nomination of my fellow Texan, Admiral Inman. He was born down in Ronesboro, Texas. You don't know where that is? That's in Upshur County near Gilmer.
Well, no, now I remember where it is.
And anybody from that far back in the sticks can't be all bad. Admiral Inman, of course, has been in the intelligence business for a long time. He comes highly recommended. I think he's an excellent choice as DDCI. I might note that this morning the Senate Armed Services Committee reported favorably his promotion to full admiral of the United States Navy. I believe that that nomination was erroneously reported to your committee. Knowing your disposition toward the Navy, I reclaimed that jurisdiction very quickly, and I'm delighted to report that he has been reported favorably to the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Tower, and congratulations, Admiral.
Thank you.
It's a rank you well deserve, and man who just introduced you lives long enough, he might make it himself. I will recognize.
Mr. Chairman, resisting the temptation to comment on your unseemly remarks, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that my full statement appear in the record in the appropriate place.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Leahy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too join in the congratulations for the extra star. Well deserved. I have a feeling, Admiral, that everybody who might be up for confirmation this year would be delighted to trade places with you. You'll, I suspect, survive the tough, hard cross-examination of this committee, and will probably even be able to predict how, following hours of debate, we will vote on your confirmation. I, too, join my colleagues in saying that I think that the President has made a fine choice. I'm delighted. As you know, I discussed this with you one other time, saying that I hope that that's a position you would be in and be able to serve your country in that position. And I'm very pleased that you are. In answer to a question, Senator Garnes, you said that the number one problem is manpower. And I realize it's an extremely broad question. Asked broadly in open session and perhaps seeking a broad answer in open session. But have we, with all our technological abilities to listen and on through, have we somehow built up kind of a myth that everything can be done by machines around here? And might we be overlooking not only, or might we not be finding ourselves into a somewhat too comfortable trap of feeling that the machines can do all our analyses, and also that they may be able to totally replace people in the field? Overly broad question, I understand.
Senator Leahy, I would put a slightly different spin on the problem. In the press of business, in an executive branch, intelligence matters, intelligence resources, intelligence capabilities simply fall way down the scale of day-by-day events. It rarely merits attention or extensive debate at the level of the President or even his senior advisors. It's been my experience in these past 4 years that I have had a great deal more time from the members of the two select committees, some of the members of the two select committees, actually visiting either my headquarters or my installations or discussing it, than with anyone in the executive branch above subcabinet level. And I think out of that process, it's simply less pressing, less worrisome. A presumption that if you're getting a flow of information day by day on your current problem, the capabilities must be there. In going back and analyzing sort of how we got where we are, they were conscious decisions. There were new capabilities that could be had by using some very advanced technology. A decision at that point in time, with great pressures of budget for Vietnam, were to pay for it rather than by adding funds to trade off manpower. Different kinds of individual actions led to those kinds of decisions. Technology does do great things for us. We are probably better at indications and warning for our principal adversaries than we have ever been. It's for the bulk of the rest of our problems, for understanding the small and sometimes not so small, political, economic crisis, terrorism, other things that we are far less prepared, I believe. And in many cases, those come from the ability to deal with those, come from the depth of our understanding on individual countries. That reporting isn't just based on what we get out of the intelligence community. In large measure, that's reporting that we get from the State Department and the Foreign Service. So it's the quality and caliber of our understanding of many countries that impact on us. I apologize, I'm giving sort of long-winded answers, that I'll try to cut them shorter.
But almost in following up then even on that, and assuming that there are going to be budgetary restraints in this next fiscal year, are we best in a position to consolidate those areas where we know we are successful and that we depend so much on, rather than starting a number of new initiatives? Or can we do both? Do we need to do both?
We've done a good job of consolidating in the collection arena. I would urge strongly that we not move for further consolidation in the analytical area. I think we ought to go exactly the opposite direction and encourage as much good, strong, competitive analysis as we can get, because you're usually dealing with shreds of information, and your assumptions that you bring to that can make a great deal of difference in what you determine those pieces mean. And let me defer a more detailed and responsive answer to your question for the next time we gather in a closed session.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chafee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Chairman, I join in the delight of this committee in the selection of Admiral Inman for this post. He did an outstanding job in NSA, and I'm so glad you're going to be doing this. You stated in answer to Senator Gahn's question, the most pressing problem is personnel. What can we as senators do to remedy this? Is it a question of money? Is it a question of appreciation of tasks that ones are undertaking? Is it a question of shortage of trained people that are motivated for this type of work? What can we do?
It begins with billets, numbers of people available. My experience has been that while there may have been a dip in the middle 70s of people interested in coming into this business, there are plenty of high-quality applicants who are indeed interested in the field. We often can't find the skills we need at the outset, particularly with linguists, but we can find people with linguistic aptitude who are willing to study. It's going to be a long process. One can't just throw large numbers of bodies immediately. The capabilities of all the agencies to recruit, to train, to use will have to be built up. But we can bring you, I think, a good, viable program. Obviously, there is the instant problem of the administration's desire, as with the past ones, to hold down the total size of federal employment. I would hope that as some programs are reduced, perhaps we can have some redress in this area in the national security account, which in fact suffered a very major reduction while other elements of the government were growing in large numbers.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Chafee. I might comment that Senator Chafee was once Secretary of the Navy. Let's see, Senator
Probably
Benson.
remember that.
Oh, he doesn't have to anymore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A number of us have had some concern, of course, about the analysis capabilities of the CIA and the results. Do you have any that you can speak of in an open meeting, any major procedural changes to bring about in the CIA on its analysis work that you bring from your experience with the National Security Agency?
Senator Benson, from the way the intelligence community has been structured and operated, I have been fairly remote from the analysis efforts in the other production agencies these last several years. I could give you an impression, though, that from my efforts to try to educate and expose young analysts coming into the other agencies, and particularly CIA, with the particular help of Bruce Clark once he took his current assignment. We're impressed with the quality. They're bright. They're eager to learn. We have a generation gap here. We've, in fact, lost across the community a lot of people who came in the 40s, who enjoyed the business and who stayed for a career. A variety of reasons, pay inversion, others have caused large numbers of them to retire. So we indeed have a building process, I think particularly in the analytical area, to give them the time. I have a sense that we need to expand the capability for them to be promoted while staying in the same general area. Not to require them to move frequently or into managerial jobs in order to have a chance to be promoted, but to offer the capability that deep expertise in a country or geographical area can also offer them a way to move up the promotion ladder. And if we can achieve that, I think we'll help in improving the quality of the analytical effort.
You were speaking of your limited access in recent times to people above the sub-cabinet level, and then you referred to dealing often in shreds of information. I get the feeling that there's a lot of intelligence information that goes upstream, but often not enough of it comes downstream for analysis purposes when we're talking about leaders of governments or people at the cabinet level dealing with their peers in other governments, and the difficulty in getting that kind of input to get back to the analysis level. Do you have any thoughts on that?
In my early years as an analyst, it was a continuing problem. I have no recent experience to say if it still is, but I suspect that it is. To some degree, that's how busy the individuals themselves are, and the degree to which they're accessible to be debriefed or to pass on their understanding. It's been my experience in these last 3.5 years that if events occurred in the outside world, I could be attuned to them and respond and adjust things pretty rapidly. And if it was planning or things going on the U.S. side, I often trailed the action.
I know of something of the depth of the work on economics done by the CIA, and we profited by that on the Joint Economic Committee. But when you speak to the manpower problems, I would hope that the economics section would not be too isolated. There's such a great wealth of information available that's being brought about by other government agencies, including what we have right here in the Congress, and I hope could be collated perhaps more than I think it has been.
In earlier closed sessions with this committee, the whole question of economic intelligence and analysis there has been a subject of some exchanges that several of us have had. Again, with the constraints of the open session. I believe probably the best intelligence we have available currently is in the military intelligence arena. And that comes from the competitive analysis. And when I was a young naval intelligence analyst, I used to rail at the fact that CIA was also spending time analyzing my problem, but I have to recognize that that probably spurred me to a better job than I would otherwise have done. From my perspective in looking these last several years, where we have substantial competitive analysis, I believe the overall quality of the outcome is better. We've not had much of that in the economic area because we've not paid much attention. There's another side to that, and one of the downsides of the middle 70s and the investigation of abuses, both those that were valid and some that turned out not to be, there was a great reluctance from the academic world, from industry, from even other government institutions to fully cooperate with the U.S. intelligence community. And that has to be very high on the list of things we have to reconstruct. There's a great deal out in the open media and other parts of the society that can help us better understand the outside world to the degree that we need to know, and I would hope we can open some of those doors and get good discussions going. Clearly, part of that is the confidence on the part of those with whom we deal that they will not be manipulated, that they will not be subjected to being used without their knowledge for collection purposes, and I hope we can find our way through that maze.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Senator. Senator Lugar.
Mr. Chairman, Admiral Inman, I know of very few people in this government that have as comprehensive an idea about what is going on in intelligence as well as what is going on generally in the world than you do. And I certainly ask these questions having prefaced with that comment because it seems to me essential if we can know that the committee have some idea from preliminary conversations that you may have had with this administration as to, first of all, what sort of access you anticipate to President Reagan himself. Will you have regular briefings? Will they be emergencies? Or will there be intelligence passed to others? Or can you characterize in any way how your own perceptions of what is important for the Chief Executive to know might reach him?
We have built up over the last several years a process for flowing indications and warning kind of information to a number of centers around this city and out to commands in the field, essentially simultaneously. That includes the State Department, the Defense Department, the White House, Central Intelligence Agency. That flow goes on uninterruptedly by changes in administration. Each administration elects to find different ways by which the chief executive is briefed. There is an ongoing process of preparing a daily briefing book for the president from the Central Intelligence Agency. I don't believe that's been subjected to any particular modifications yet, but it's pretty early. Usually that occurs 3 to 6 months. They try the products that are available to them and decide if they're responsive to their needs, and if not, then the alteration process begins. From my point of view, one of the great advantages of the appointment of Mr. Casey as the Director of Central Intelligence is the clearly established direct personal relationship with the President that he brings to the job. And that ought to be the best guarantee for the kind of access to take problems as you recognize them to grow larger and to not be shunted off by others who might get in the way of being able to tell the President what he needs to hear.
So your access would come through Director Casey.
Through Director Casey and acting on his behalf when he's away at travel.
And obviously your working relationship with him is of the essence. And obviously it will be a good one. He has apparently enthusiastically recommended you as our chairman, as have all members of this committee. If there was ever a time of unanimous consent enthusiasm, this would be it.
I hope we'll be able to sustain that enthusiasm over the next couple of years as we face all the challenges.
Now, are the other armed services people who deal in intelligence equally enthusiastic? Or phrase it another way, what sort of relationship has been set up between Mr. Casey and you and those in the other armed services, as well as the Navy, who are dealing in intelligence? This has been a problem, as you've perceived in comments to us over the course of time, that has given pause to some people who have gotten into this field. And I'm just curious to know how it is progressing in this administration.
It's fair and honest to say that the pace of organizing all these things is very slow. A lot of that is because I'm not yet removed from my current assignments. I would hope that March and April will see the pace pick up very sharply. I have over the years practiced a general theory of conservation of enemies, that if you're spending a great deal of time out fighting with people, you're missing opportunities to solve problems. Occasionally you will have to get into fights when it's over matters of principle. But that one has to spend the time to seek the views of the other managers in the intelligence community. It is a time-consuming process. As I had explained earlier, Director Casey has indicated he wishes me to particularly concentrate in that area, and I will hope to be able to build some better bridges than we've had in the last several years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Biden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Admiral, I, too, join with everyone else. It's getting to be awfully repetitive. I don't know of anyone who is opposed. I don't know of anybody who's not enthusiastic. As a matter of fact, I shared the dais in my home state as an invitee for the Chamber of Commerce, and the main speaker was former General Keegan, retired General Keegan. It worried the hell out of me. He liked you, too. He said you were the only one, he said, in the entire intelligence community that was competent. Based on that, I've reassessed my position. By way of an informal opening statement and closing statement, it's not merely your technical expertise, which is immense, but in dealing with you and through you over the past several years since the inception of this committee, I've been impressed with your sense of balance and sense of history. And there are not a lot of people in your business or any other business that possess both those qualifications. And I can think of no place where a sense of both balance and history is more important than the job you'll be assuming. So I'm enthusiastic about your appointment. I would like to ask you a couple very specific questions, if I may, for the record. You've already begun, and I apologize for being late. Apparently, Senator Garn asked you, I picked up from subsequent questioning, what you thought the most important problem facing the agency was, the intelligence community generally. If I can attempt to be a little more specific than that, and if you've already covered this, tell me, and I will read it in the record and go on to my next question. As a producer of intelligence, as you have been, what do you believe are the principal strengths of the major pieces of finished intelligence that are generated by the community? And then the major weaknesses, if you will. In other words, you know,
To some degree, Senator Biden, I have, but let me try to summarize quickly back. On current intelligence, we're very good. On counting things in numbers, we're outstanding. On indications and warning, on balance, against the major worries, the record is very impressive. In assessing where events are going, we do less well. And there are many areas that we simply do not cover at all, or cover only with the thinnest margin. And many of our surprises come from those areas. If one believes that the 80s are going to be characterized primarily by strife in the central front of Europe, you can sort of relax, we're in great shape. If you believe it is more likely to be characterized by a great deal of difficulty and competition for raw materials, natural resources, instability in underdeveloped areas of the world, and being drawn into those both by opportunism from our principal adversaries and by our own difficulty in trying to protect our interests, then we are far less well ready for it, both from our collection, from a whole variety, human as well as technical means, in the analytical